Again, no evidence whatsoever that Epstein was working for another state. He's just hanging out with the presidents and the prime ministers, and they are flying over to him in New York. Don't even act surprised when he pardons Ghislaine Maxwell. That would just be foolish of you, foolish of me to think that he's not going to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell.
So recently, Candace Owens chimed in on the latest when it comes to the Epstein saga, the Epstein cover-up, whatever you want to call it at this point, when she declares categorically that Trump will pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. Everything that goes into that, she gets into that Epstein's past is the key to everything and his associations. So let's see what she has to say about that. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Okay, that is kind of interesting, you know, as we get into this Epstein story, especially because Ehud Barak is the person that was caught multiple times, former prime minister of Israel, going in and out of Jeffrey Epstein's home, right? Check out this article. This is from the Times of Israel. I'm going to read it directly. I'm going to quote this. It says, quote, former Prime Minister Ehud Barak met with the late disgraced financier and child sexual abuser Jeffrey Epstein dozens of times beginning in 2013, according to a new report on Wednesday by the Wall Street Journal. Barak was among the list of Jewish names, including pioneering linguist and left-wing activist Noam Chomsky, longtime Bard College president Leon Botstein, and filmmaker Woody Allen, listed in a newly uncovered private calendar for Epstein. The Wall Street Journal reported in the first part of its investigative series on the hugely influential Jewish donor who used his largesse to obscure what investigators, according to the Wall Street Journal's Wednesday report on the calendar's contents, Barak visited Epstein about 30 times between 2013 and 2017 at his estates in Florida and New York, including a time in 2014 when the former Israeli premier flew with Epstein on his private aircraft from Palm Beach to Tampa.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not it. They make it seem like he just visited Epstein several dozen times, it says in this article, but he actually lived with him for prolonged periods of time. And Epstein gave Ehud Barak a significant amount of money. Ostensibly, it was to help support his entrepreneurial endeavors, apparently. But there's questions about that, too, because one of the things that Epstein did is give Ehud Barak $2.3 million to write 2 essays, one of which he didn't even finish. So it really seems to have been a front for whatever he was giving him money to do, and the essays was just kind of a cover for that. That is the case. This is one very highly documented situation in which Epstein is connected to high-ranking officials from Israeli intelligence, Ehud Barak being the former head of IDF intelligence, in addition to being a prime minister. Jeffrey Epstein also introduced Netanyahu to executives at J.P. Morgan in the United States, and he knew 2 other Israeli prime ministers as well. So again, every time you hear people say, oh, it's just a conspiracy theory, he didn't have any connections to Israeli intelligence or Israeli prime ministers or, agents from Israel, well, that's the truth.
After which Epstein went on to New York. Barak said his wife and an Israeli security guard were also on that flight. He said he flew with Epstein on his private planes on one other occasion, also with his wife and guards. According to the report, Barak also met with Epstein monthly for nearly a year, beginning in December of 2015. Okay. Let's not be conspiracy theorists. We don't need to be conspiracy theorists at all. Let's just be rational. That's what we always try to do. Let's just be rational here.
The conspiracy theorists would say that he had no connections to any intelligence services, any intelligence assets, any former leaders of intelligence services at all. That's the real conspiracy, not that he didn't. That's well documented.
You give me a reason. Somebody in the chat, make it make sense, all right? That the former prime minister of Israel, who at that time, by the way, there was a massive scandal. It's actually why he didn't get reelected. He was up against Netanyahu. Former prime minister of Israel would be meeting with a convicted pedophile. Okay, let's not forget, he did the deal and copped to, this is what I do. Maybe I've trafficked a few people that are underage. He did that back in 2007. So what would be the reason that if you're a politician and you're running, don't you especially want to keep your hands clean, right? You're supposed to be like, I'm definitely not going to be caught in pictures. I'm definitely not going to be meeting with somebody who's convicted and who's a pedophile. Like, that would be crazy. But Ehud Barak did that monthly, by the way, in 2015.
And he wasn't the only one that met with Epstein a lot of times after that child molestation conviction and the sweetheart deal that he got. You know, the jail release program for 6 days. He got to be out 12 hours in between his properties internationally, get free fresh air. They built a branch of the sheriff's department essentially just for him, installed a special TV. But it was people like Bill Gates and Stephen Hawking and others that met with him after this was the case, after he was convicted for that. Why? I don't know. I mean, when it's the head of Israeli intelligence, that raises some questions. It must have been pretty darn important for that person to want to risk their reputation to be spotted with this guy.
What are these meetings about? Are you not busy? Are you not busy? Don't you have to like go, I don't know, do important political things in Israel? What are you doing here meeting with this guy? What do you, I would suggest, and look, I'm going to check the chat because like I said, we don't need to be conspiracy theories here, but I would imagine, given everything that we know about Jeffrey Epstein, that it would be reasonable to assume that these might have been intelligence briefings because he was controlling a blackmail ring, clearly. And
that's at least a plausible scenario, more so than the scenario that they throw at us. Remember, their scenario and their narrative is Epstein killed himself. He had no intelligence connections. There were no clients. There was no blackmail. All that evidence we found and documented, it all turned out to be nothing. He didn't even have any other associates that knew what he was up to. You know, Ghislaine Maxwell got convicted for sex trafficking to no one, outside of Epstein, I guess. Despite all the victim accusations, this didn't go beyond Epstein. Just those absurdities, that's the real conspiracy, not the circumstantial evidence that Candace is talking about that points to a Mossad connection. Remember, he also was mentored by Robert Maxwell for it seems like about 6 years, from 1985 to about 1991, when he started appearing with Ghislaine for the first time. And he was connected to Douglas Leese. He was connected to Adnan Khashoggi, both figures that were involved in arms trafficking deals, including Iran-Contra. He was a major money mover in the 1980s when those things were occurring. And, you know, connections to Les Wexner, one of the biggest Zionist benefactors in the country. All these things show a different history than what we've been told, and a different narrative than what we've been sold.
that might be pretty useful if you're a politician. I'm guessing here, I'm surmising. And yet, by the way, we just telling you guys that today, and yet Pam Bondi, our Attorney General of the United States, says that she can find no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein may have been working on behalf of another state. Not even the photos of the former Prime Minister of Israel going in and out. And what's incredible, by the way, is that when you get further into that story with Ehud Barak, because then he has to explain away why he was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein so much. He's like, no, I met Jeffrey Epstein through the former president of Israel. Oh, again, no evidence whatsoever that Epstein was working for another state. He's just hanging out with the presidents and the prime ministers, and they are flying over to him in New York. I don't know, guys, when I take a look at this entire picture, everything that's happening right now in America from start to finish, all of this just feels like one big Mossad operation. We're supposed to imagine maybe Jeffrey Epstein really did kill himself, and yeah, by accident, 3 minutes from the prison, footage got deleted leading up to this moment where he killed himself. And yeah, the New York Post was kind of involved in some shady photography in the week that he killed himself. And yeah, we can't really explain away the orange blob that's on the screen that kind of makes it look like someone did go into his prison cell leading up to his quote unquote suicide.
Or the 3 broken bones, including 2 that world-class forensic anthropologist and analyst Michael Bodden said don't break typically during a hanging. Or the fact that William Barr, the son of Donald Barr, who hired Epstein for his first job, William Barr, did whatever he could to sweep any suspicion of wrongdoing here under the rug. Didn't launch an investigation as to why this guy is dead. Doesn't investigate why, his cellmate was moved out apparently the day in advance or something like that. And yeah, that was raw footage that just happened to cut out 3 minutes at a time. And Bondi cleared that up. One of those minutes, it happened going back to 1999 every single night. Nothing to see there. Even though that video was stitched together, all these things, they've created a narrative, and they must be stupid to think all of us are going to buy it, because we're not. And she's right. The intelligence connections have been long revealed by people that have researched this case, like Daryl Cooper and Whitney Webb, put this evidence out there, and his connections, do they talk about them at all? No. They just say no intelligence connections. It's widely known that he met with Barack. How is that not an intelligence connection?
I don't know, guys. Or we are a totally occupied nation, or our politicians have been completely rendered impotent as it pertains to the state of Israel because they've all been blackmailed in one way or another. And Jeffrey Epstein is actually the linchpin of everything. It's why they're protecting the story so much. And who's protecting that right now? Trump. Obviously, Trump. Don't even act surprised when he pardons Ghislaine Maxwell. That would just be foolish of you, foolish of me to think that he's not going to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, okay? Trump is implicated by his sheer deceit right now in this moment. He is being so deceitful. It's incredible. And it seems to only be getting worse because now they keep pretending that they're trying to get to the bottom of everything, but they don't actually get to the bottom of everything. They actually seem to just be covering things up. They're making
Yeah, that's the thing. Even if Trump isn't implicated in any of Epstein's crimes, and we've seen no evidence to indicate that because they're covering it up, Trump is certainly deceitful, as she says, and guilty of participating actively in the cover-up. He could be the guy that says these files are coming out as his subordinates promised, and he promised several times on the campaign trail, including in that podcast with Lex Friedman. But if nothing else, he's guilty of the cover-up, and I'm not absolving others of wrongdoing in that. It certainly is Bondi and Kash Patel and Bongino now all on board with this and this absurd narrative, the same one that Biden sold, that Epstein killed himself and Trump's administration began that investigation. That's what we're being given. As far as whether Maxwell will get pardoned or not, well, I guess we'll have to see. They're certainly seeming to set up a scenario where that's possible, moving her to, a Texas prison that seems more like a resort than a supermax prison that she should belong in, and I believe she was originally in. But I guess we won't know. It's hard for me to believe Trump will do that right now. Maybe at the end of his term, or maybe if this blows over, if it ever does blow over, and I'm not sure it ever will. I think this has a better chance of becoming this generation's JFK, and the can of worms and questions that were opened over that whole thing over generations of time than ever going away, and certainly affecting him in the midterms. So I guess we'll have to see about that.
Moves that only reveal a deeper cover-up. Case in point, remember this whole bit? We're going to be the first to actually interview Ghislaine Maxwell. I know we fumbled the ball. Now we're saying that there is no list. But hey, you know what? To show a true measure here, we are going to go interview Ghislaine Maxwell in prison, okay? This is Pam Bondi's tweet to that effect. She tweeted this on July 22nd, which was a statement from the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche. It reads, "This Department of Justice does not shy away from uncomfortable truths, nor..."
Imagine that. Imagine her saying that the DOJ doesn't shy away from uncomfortable truths after all the cover-up that's gone into the Epstein story. It's absurd. It's so laughable. It's almost sad if it wasn't so funny. Or is it sad, but it would be funny if it wasn't so sad? It's one of the two, for sure.
From the responsibility to pursue justice wherever the facts may lead. The joint statement by the DOJ and the FBI on July 6th remains as accurate today as it was when it was written, namely that in the recent thorough review of the files maintained by the FBI in the Epstein case, no evidence was uncovered that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties.
Of course.
That's amazing to me. President Trump has told us to release all credible evidence.
All credible evidence, i.e. not the Russiagate hoax part of the Epstein files, which is what Trump was going with for a while. Credible evidence, not evidence that implicates anyone close to Trump, of course, which they won't even release any of the material that doesn't implicate Trump, by the way, because it's a big uniparty. There's a lot of people involved in this, probably a lot of lobbyists, politicians, legal minds, etc. They're not going to release any of it.
If Ghislaine Maxwell has information about anyone who has committed crimes against victims, the FBI and the DOJ will hear what she has to say. Therefore, at the direction of Attorney General Bondi, I have communicated with counsel for Ms. Maxwell to determine whether she would be willing to speak with the prosecutors from the Department of Justice. I anticipate meeting with Ms. Maxwell in the coming days. Until now, no administration on behalf of the department has inquired about her willingness to meet with the government. That changes now. Thank you, Todd Blanche. So they sent Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, and I should mention also one of Trump's former lawyers. He was Trump's lawyer on the criminal case in Manhattan, which was it was total nonsense, and it was a show trial. But he was Trump's attorney at that time, and that is who they sent down to go speak and inquire with Ghislaine Maxwell.
Should have been live streamed, by the way. Live stream that interview. I think it was over the course of 2 or 3 days even. Imagine that, if the public held what she, or heard what she was saying there, that isn't filtered through this absurd cover-up process, the layer of the deep state in charge of, burying things that would be transparent otherwise. Obviously you'd have to hide people's names potentially in cases like this that weren't actually implicated in crimes, but, did come up in the course of those conversations, but they won't do that either. They won't have a transcript of this. We won't learn her unfiltered testimony at all. It seems like it is a setup for a possible, pardon, but we'll have to see.
To see if she had any information about anybody else who could have committed crimes involving Jeffrey Epstein. And what came out of that meeting was news that Ghislaine Maxwell was being transferred to an even lower security prison. She's already in a low security prison, but they're now transferring her into an even lower security prison.
All expenses paid resort. Free drinks on Texas, on the Lone Star State. You get all you can drink Lone Star beer, too. Roll out the red carpet. Make it better than the sweetheart deal Epstein got after his child molestation conviction. Crazy and absurd.
Just known as Camp Brian. And remarkably, when questioned about this, Trump says that he didn't even know that was happening. Like he's learning with the rest of us. Take a listen.
2 questions for you. One, were you aware of and did you personally approve the prison transfer for Ghislaine Maxwell that your Justice Department?
I didn't know about it at all. No, I read about it just like you did.
Who knows if that's true? I mean, this DOJ is run amok, and who knows how deeply involved Trump himself is. I mean, we know he's involved in the cover-up. Whether he was involved in authorizing that decision, I don't know what goes into that. But I do think there's a setup here for a possible pardon. I think Candace is right about that. I'm not certain that the pardon's going to come down anytime soon, if at all. If it does, I think, again, it would probably be toward the end of Trump's term. She'll live in luxury in maybe one of these resort prisons until that time, if that is really the setup going on here. But look, I can almost script what she's going to say. Epstein sex trafficked clients only to him. I was a victim in this. Epstein took advantage and manipulated me as well. Alan Dershowitz wasn't involved. Bill Richardson wasn't involved. Bill Clinton wasn't involved. Donald Trump wasn't involved. He had literally no connections to Mossad or Israeli intelligence, even though Ehud Barak was staying over at his home for prolonged periods of time. You could just... I'm sorry, guys, but you could just script what they're going to say or have her say to really put the final nails in the coffin of this cover-up, if that's what this is, and it does have some appearances of that. And hey, I just did a poll on my channel page. What would be most likely to happen next? Trump disengaging from Ukraine, Trump releasing the Epstein files, Trump abolishing the IRS, or Trump pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell. That was the last answer. And it was 82% pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell is most likely to happen next out of those 4 options. And I know some are pie in the sky, but a lot of Trump supporters would have thought that he would disengage from Ukraine by now. But that's a whole nother topic. I talk about that in other videos. You guys can check those out if you want. But hey, this is absurd. We know the connections are there, even if circumstantial, and there's just a web of evidence that leads to intelligence connections, and that's what this whole thing probably is. And she pointed to it and alluded to it here that Epstein probably was a Rosetta Stone of sorts that could decode the evils in the deep state as it pertained to the child sex trafficking ring that was basically imposed because it was an intelligence operation on the part of a foreign government, most likely Israel. He had most connections to Israel. We've talked about them all countless times. But yeah, Trump is going to jeopardize the rest of his platform and the rest of his agenda if he keeps going down this road, especially if he pardons her now. Part of me just thinks like he's not even so retarded that he would pardon her now. It's like the only way to make it worse. The thing that can make this better, he ends the IRS tomorrow. Abolish the IRS. A lot of people would start forgetting about the Epstein case. I wouldn't be one of them. I would rejoice about ending the IRS. But a lot of people would not talk about it and clamor about it and hold it against him like they are in cases like this, in cases like rearming Ukraine, in cases like not cutting government or entertaining actual Doge cuts to the potential that was promised and recognized, and all those other things. That's how he can get away from this. End the IRS. Otherwise, this is going to be held against him, probably hurt him in the midterms. We're seeing that from polls. This is hurting him in more ways than other issues that people have had with him, among his base especially. And you can just tell they're reacting to this a little bit different than some of the other critiques that he's gotten. I don't think successfully. I think some of the pivots haven't worked. The pivot to Russiagate probably did help the most, and there were some meritorious things in those docs. You know, that according to some of the best experts on that topic, I think, including Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate and Glenn Greenwald and some people like that. And Matt Taibbi has chimed in on that. But I don't think that he can get completely away from this unless he does something drastic that everyone wants, which is impossible. Like, let's just be real. Let's be not utopian for a second. He's not going to end the IRS. It's just not going to happen, but it is one way that he can get away from it. I just bring that up because her and Milo joked about that the other day, but that's where we are. Let me know in the comments below. I do want to hear from you on this. Is Candace Owens right? Will Trump pardon Ghislaine Maxwell? Is Epstein's past the key to everything here? The key to Mossad? The key to the Israel lobby stranglehold on the American political class? Let me know down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Candace also. Really appreciated this segment by her. Great work she has done on this. And please consider becoming a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, I'll graciously appreciate your support for the channel. And in return, I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.